Hello, it's Father Rich. I'm here in the guest sitting room at Our Lady of Peace Rectory for our next masterpiece, number 74. One of the pictures that drew me to this area was this image of Jesus titled, "I Have Always Loved You," kind of a penetrating look of Jesus. And thinking of this next masterpiece, it's actually the Four Holy Gospels by a Japanese artist by the name of, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, Makoto Fujimura, and from 2011. Interestingly enough, that same year was completed another illuminated. So it was illuminated Gospels. He did 5 major covers for each of the Gospels, 4 Gospels, and then overall for all the Gospels. And then I think he illuminated the first letter of maybe 89 different verses, and did some other work in helping with this overall illumination, the 4 Holy Gospels, and obviously it focused on the Gospels. In 2011 was also the completion of an even more ambitious project, which wasn't one of the masterpieces, but Deacon Glenn Bailey kind of had brought my attention to it. It was done in conjunction with a man named Donald Jackson, who was a Christian, I think, Anglican from England and Wales, who had this vision of wanting to do an illuminated Bible, and got connected with a monk from the St. John's Abbey up in Minnesota, and in 1998 started this effort. He had visions of it in the 80s, and they started getting serious about it in mid-90s. They actually commissioned it and started in 1998, completed it in 2011. I think in 2015 or so, they presented the final, an actual copy of it for St. John Paul II, or excuse me, it wouldn't have been 2015, maybe it was Pope Francis. But St. John Paul II had been presented the first copy. They finished in 1999 or whenever they started. They were doing it by sections. So really a remarkable accomplishment. They have different illuminations and artwork that's done. You know, this was the first illuminated Bible completed in a monastery since like the printing press in the 1400s. Because obviously this is how they used to copy the Bible for 1400 years in monasteries, mostly through the monks. So this was a return to that process. And so the whole thing was handwritten, and it took them, like I said, 13 years to complete. Really a remarkable achievement. And they have the different books you can get. And so I encourage you to check that out. But the Four Holy Gospels by like I said, Makoto Fujimura. He was actually Japanese descent, but his parents were from Japan. He was born in the United States, but then went back to Japan for much of his training, and he ended up being an abstract artist. So his paintings are abstract. This is a copy of his John's in the Beginning. You'll have to go check it out online. Again, like I said, there's 5 main pieces of art that represent the 4 Gospels. They are called The Tears of Christ, is the overall introductory painting for the Gospels. Then Consider the Lilies is the version for Matthew. He built it up over 60 layers of colored mineral pigments. And again, he was combining abstract art with his Japanese traditions of art. And much of that was grinding their own paints and pigments and mixing pigments and layering pigments. So really amazing. 60 layers of colored mineral pigments, including azurite and malachite. And then they have for Mark, it's called the Water Flames. And to visual language, very similar to the artist Mark Rothko. They mentioned him several times in here, so he had a big influence on this type of art. And then Luke's image is called the Prodigal God, a painting that Fujimura describes as depicting his own struggle between the legalism of religion, the older brother, and the reckless spendthrift nature of the father's love in the story. And then the final painting, the one I just showed you in the beginning, it's depicting of John's Gospel. It evokes the dawn of creation, makes reference to both Christ as the creator and to the mystery of his incarnation. It says, appropriately, it is the most mystical of the 5 masterful paintings, but all 5 paintings serve well as objects of contemplation, works that reward patient inspection to allow them to unfold themselves to the gaze of the viewer. And again, admittedly, I don't do as well with abstract art, so these are a little more challenging for me. But they really, again, invite the viewer to contemplation, as we hear, some of the movies we've talked about and other artwork that really kind of try to force contemplation out of you, to sit and spend time with the piece of work, to do some work to get something out of it, as opposed to having some easy image that you pick up right away. So they mentioned that, the result is it's a great visual feast, a masterpiece in the form of a sacred book, not unlike those created by medieval monks. But of course, the abstract art would be very different than what the medieval monks would do. It was actually commissioned for the 400th anniversary of the King James Version of the Bible, which would have been in 2011. So going back to 1611, when the St. James Version of the Bible, which has the highest English language, is kind of considered the highest English translation of the Bible. We don't use it as Catholics very much in our tradition, but some of the other Protestant denominations do use it quite frequently, if not seeing it as a foundational translation for them. So Fujimura was born in 1960, as I mentioned, in the States, went over, spent time in Tokyo, was trained there. They go on to mention that while studying in Tokyo, he began to attend church with his wife, who was also, she admittedly was in kind of searching for meaning, deeper meaning in her life. And, at first he was unimpressed. They say he rejected the teachings as outdated and irrelevant, but at the same time, he was experiencing growing a need for a sense of meaning and purpose in his life beyond making art. And so, while, art was very important to him, it couldn't answer some of the deeper stirrings in his heart and that he was looking for in religion. And then they say that ultimately, believe it or not, it was the poetry of William Blake, who, remember, was one of the Songs of Innocence, that was one of our masterpieces, that nudged him towards faith, helped him to begin to get the sense of the Christian message. And then they say he had the kind of personality, once he started to embrace something, he went all in. So now he was full into his Christian faith, and he wanted to use his artwork to now inspire faith. And he actually founded a, I forget the name of it, a group that would go on to, he would help, okay, here it is, the International Arts Movement, an organization dedicated to helping other creative individuals wrestle with issues of art, faith, and living fully as human beings. It says he's a prolific blogger and essayist on such issues, and has written a book telling of his personal journey, River Grace. He's published a collection of his blog posts called Refractions, and wrote Silence and Beauty, his reflection on the novel Silence by Susaku Endo, which, interestingly enough, Martin Scorsese ended up making a movie of that book, Silence, about 10 years ago, I think. A big impact on him was that he was back in the United States, living in New York, just 3 blocks from the towers when they were hit and destroyed. And so in the midst of that, that had a big influence on him. He really had some profound reflections on that. He talked about, despite our fallen nature, God desires to reflect goodness, beauty, and truth in us. God desires to refract his perfect light via the broken, prismatic shards of our lives. Art and creativity will end up being delivered back to the Creator's hands in that pure light. So, he said a serious artist can't ignore that pain, suffering represented by the terrorist attacks and the moral ugliness of the times. But an artist of faith also knows that this is not the end of the story. God is at work in a reclamation project in which the artist can be a participant. So really some profound wisdom and inspiring perspective from this artist for our masterpiece 74. So he went on to do other masterworks, paintings that reflect T.S. Eliot's mystical poems of four quartets, which again was another one of our masterpieces, and some other ones that you can check out. At the end, he talks about the act of painting with precious minerals is like Mary anointing the feet of Jesus. Talks about, using this this method that God uses natural elements and pigments to create art. In the last line, in his beautiful abstractions, the spiritual and physical come together in the incarnation of God's beauty. So that's the Four Holy Gospels by Makoto Fujimura, 2011. Our last masterpiece, it will be next. Number 75, The Tree of Life. It's a film by Terrence Malick, 2011 as well. So hope you'll join me. Thanks you for being here. God take care and God bless.